Good morning, good morning. If you're still comfortable in bed, just opening your eyes, enjoy your first cup of coffee, or watching the sunrise, thank you for letting us part of your morning. Summer is a beautiful season. The gardens are full of life. The trees are green, flowers are blooming, and every plant has its own unique beauty. Today, I invite you to take a few moments this morning after the show to enjoy nature. Stay with us because Larry has another great show for you. Let's get started, Larry.
Welcome to the Home and Garden Show. We're talking about outdoor living, whether it be your ponds, your pergola, your chamards, oak, anything to do with being outside. If you have a question on that, or if you can't get your grass to turn green, or you have problems with irrigation, you want to give us a call at 855-765-1045, 855-765-1045. We'd love to have your call. We invite you to call us. And if you got any great ideas, you've really had success this year or something, you want to pass along and share that with us. We'd love to have those great ideas. We want to incorporate it in our garden. This time of the year, we're looking at lawns because, lawns are, got to look good. If your lawn doesn't look good, your landscape really doesn't look that great. And sometimes these spots occur in your lawn that just don't seem to go away. They're you just, water and you fertilize them and they just, are stubborn, and you put sod there and it dies. And there's several different things that could be occurring. Number one, it could be nematodes. Nematodes are a problem in sandy soil, and they're a very microscopic insect, and they prey on the roots of the grass, and they really thrive in that sandy soil, and that's a big issue. So some lawns are completely infected with it, but you may have a spot in your lawn or an area in your lawn that is just continually struggling, or you replace it and just in that one spot. And it's hard to get rid of these nematodes because there's really not any insecticide that's allowed for homeowner use. And the issue is that what I normally do when I have this issue is I remove that area. Let's say if it's, we were just working on a spot, we're doing the maintenance on this property, and it's like about 2x3 area, and we're working on it, trying to get it to do better, but it just wouldn't. So I said it's got to be nematodes. So we dug up that whole spot, and maybe around 12 inches deep, and then we put back regular topsoil back in there, planted grass, and it completely went away. That was nematodes. And if you have a large area, you can send your lawn out for a nematode test, your grass out for a nematode test. And they'll tell you what kind you have. There's several different kinds. If you have I went to one client's house, and they've had problem with their lawn. So I took a soil test, and took a soil sample of the grass and sent it out. Nematodes. The whole lawn had been infected with nematodes, and it wiped out the lawn a couple of times. And the best solution for that is, because you can't dig out the whole lawn, is heavy organic fertilizers like mill organite, fish emulsion, and repetitive applications of that is your best bet to solve that, because nematodes hate one thing. They do not love organic soil. That's why they thrive in that sandy soil in our areas, but you want to get, probably if you could get a tote, or one of those 1-ton bags of green edge. You can buy it. You go online and buy it as a 1-ton bag. You need to have a large amount of that, and continual applications on the soil, and the nematode population would be extremely reduced. Of course, you could put fish emulsion on there too to really speed it up, and you'll notice your lawn recovering. Or before you plant, if your lawn died from nematode infestation, and that would be something you want to definitely do before you put your new grass in, because if your grass died from nematode infestation, then if you put your new grass in, it's going to die immediately too. So if you're having, what would you look for? Wilting, in the middle of the day, even though you watered, that would be some sign of it. And it would just be not necessarily turning yellow, just thatching up, and the roots, sometimes you could tell by looking at the roots. The roots are kind of distorted, bulbous, and they have points in the root system that's kind of bulbous. And those would be a good indication. But always before you begin that, you should always have it take a sample and send it out and to conclude what the best thing to do, because you may have take all root rot and you don't look at it because you're not an expert. Or if you're not an expert, then at looking at these things and you haven't looked at it for 20 years, then you might be making a mistake. So you don't want to treat for one thing, and it's like going to a car dealership and, they're keep replacing parts, hopefully, and that's gonna work sooner or later, but you wanna have a good diagnosis and make sure that, that you're treating for the right thing. But that's one of the reasons you have these dry spots in there, or spots will not do well during the season, even though that you're putting, fertilizer on, it's getting adequate water. It just never, ever seems to recover. Well, there's that music. This is the Home and Garden Show with Larry's Garden Landscape and Design. We'll be right back with more great garden talk. Welcome to the Home and Garden Show. I'm Larry O'Neill with Larry's Garden Landscape and Design, and we are talking about outdoor living, whether it be your pond, your pergola, your Chamard's oak, how to get things green in your garden, even though it's, 98, 99. It's hot, hot, hot. Get an early start in the garden, or work a little later, or just build up your endurance to that heat. We're working out there and doing irrigation yesterday. It was hot. I think it was close to 100 degrees yesterday. But if you have a call, if you have a question and you want to call us, and if you have some good ideas also, and you want to pass that along to us, you want to give us a call at 855-765-1045, 855-765-1045. We're talking about those dead spots on the lawn that, you just don't seem to go away. And nematodes is a problem in our area. And because of sandy soil, they only thrive in sandy soil and super thrive. They got about, actually, in our soil, I think there's like 4 or 5 different species of nematodes that can attack your grass. It also, you could be aware that if you have it in your vegetable garden, that it can be a problem there in your flower beds, anywhere where your plants just don't seem to thrive. Even though you're watering them, they look wilty. They don't completely suddenly die, but they die over a long period of time. And you really notice when you water, they just really don't do much. You're fertilizing, nothing's happening. That's an issue. In the vegetable garden, that's pretty easy to solve. Just, add a lot of compost to it and a lot of fish emulsion. Again, I caution you on using mill organite or green edge, any of that in vegetable gardens, because not that mill organite is a bad product, not that it's just that when they're processing it, these forever chemicals could be in the water, or could be dumped by an industrial company. It could be, the companies that are dumping at the same time they're collecting that the sludge could have a negative effect on there. And so even though they do testing, and it's pretty, when you read some of the horrifying things that's happened to farmers when the cities or the municipalities have given away that biosludge, and they were full of forever chemicals, and they had to completely stop the farming that land. So the land was absolutely useless. So, in your vegetable gardens, be cautious, something we eat, and use, just compost, fish emulsion, you can use alfalfa pellets, all kinds of things to retard the nematodes. They just don't like organic materials. And they'll go away over a period of time, or remove the soil if it's a small garden. But put at least, you could use also in the vegetable garden to really to be precautionary, is use a lot of, leaf litter, like from a ground up branches and leaves. You could prepare that garden bed, when you sit 3 to 4 months in advance, and then you can garden that. And all that decaying and material will retard the nematodes. And then another thing that happens a lot of times in new homes is that, when they're bringing this topsoil in, or they're not really topsoil, but bringing in fill dirt in certain areas, and one part of the yard will have a completely different pH than another part of the yard. This about a couple years ago, so we were called out to look at this viburnum hedge. It was a big, long viburnum hedge, and it was about 100 and probably 150 feet long. And some sections of the hedge look good and some sections of the hedge look bad, and what came to be out of all that is that when they brought in the fill dirt, that some areas were with the one type of dirt and other areas, and when we tested the pH, they're all over the place, you know what I mean? And just for an example, we were working in a while ago, we were working in our perennial garden that we started with 6,000 perennials in there. And this is remarkable that because it really is noticeable that our first dump truck of material came and we laid it out, and then our next dump truck, and then our next dump truck of about 20 something yards, and we laid that, spread it all out. And the right side has a perfect pH, 66, about 6 to 6.2. The mid section starts to get low, and then the other section is very low, 4.5. And it's very interesting is that you see the same plants planted in each section, the same plants, and how it really affects the overall growth of that material, of the plant material. Well, this is the Home Garden Show with Larry's Garden Landscape and Design, and we'll be right back with more great garden talk. Welcome to the Home and Garden Show. I'm Larry O'Neill with Larry's Garden Landscape and Design, and we are talking about outdoor living, whether it be your pond, your pergola, your perennial garden, your vegetable garden, and how to get your pH correct. That's always the number one priority in having good growing environment for your plant. Instead of always trying to put a Band-Aid over the issue, like fungicide, pesticide, check your pH first and give the plant the right growing environment. And they're very resistant to any type of fungus, insecticides, and insects. But we were taught a very interesting thing that happened by mistake, not because of my planning, but it's been very interesting observing it. We planted a perennial garden that's around 100 feet long and around 25 feet wide at the maximum area. And, 6,000 different perennials are in there. 6,000 perennials are in there, but, and some shrubbery and some Japanese maples and assorted things. But as we are watching the garden as it's growing and fertilizing and maintaining it's absolutely beautiful. But we observed that there was a difference in some of the plant material that, maybe it looks like a little manganese deficiency here, and this looks a little bit deficient in something here, and then the right side had no deficiencies. And we took the pH meter out and we tested all the sections, and we realized that the pH on the right side where the plants looked really good, they would be a 10. And then the plants in the middle looked good, but you could see that there was a little bit of difference because we had the same plants planted throughout the garden. Okay, so we were observing the difference in the two. And then we checked the next section, and of course, the pH got all the way down to 4.5, and there were different soil that was brought in to different times. We had 3 or 4 truckloads of the soil brought in, and we really, these one particular plants, Coreopsis, was blooming, vigorous, just super vigorous, and loaded with so much color that you could hardly see the green on. And the other side still was, the far left side, which had a pH of 4.5. They were green, but they didn't look good, as far as they were not flowering. And that you could tell there was a slight difference. Not, if you had the plants were separated out and you didn't see them side by side, you'd probably definitely a homeowner would not notice a difference. But we could tell there was a difference in the vigorousness and the texture of the leaves. So, that's what caused us to check the pH. First thing we do is check the pH. So that happens in your lawn too. Going back to your lawn is that the one area of the grass may look really, really great, and especially if it's a new build, and the pH could be different in your lawn than is in the front and to the back, to the right side of your lawn or the left side, because they bring in these filters and they all have different pHs in them. And so that would be an indication of that you need to, have a better evaluation on your pH. And we were talking about a viburnum head that was about 150 feet, 120 feet, some 100 plus feet. And it had one section was good, one section was not so good, one section was good, so we checked the pH, and you could see by looking at the soil that they had. There were different colors at that particular time. And I said, these were all brought in with filter. As soon as we adjusted the pH was corrected in those sections, boom, the soil provided the nutrients, the plants, the viburnum heads started growing in those bad sections. Same thing with our perennial garden. We observed the difference. We checked the pH, we adjusted the pH, and boom, the plants started blooming immediately within 1 week after we adjusted the pH. The side that had a high pH, which was really, low pH, very low in the 4, the plants started blooming immediately. And also the foliage started changing color. The foliage of the other plants started changing color, become more enriched. And this happens in your lawn, and it trying to discover the reasons. A lot of times people come out and look at it and they try to discover the reason, why, and you get a bunch of opinions. But this is a science, okay? It's a science. It's not a, of course, if you have somebody with lots of experience, they can make a educated guess. But, you want to make sure you can buy a pH meter. It's very, very inexpensive. I bought one for like $69 and tried it out. It wasn't the best, construction, but it worked. It worked. It was maybe a point off than from the professional one we used, but it worked and it gave a good reading. So you can come to a conclusion. What is the issue? Then, if you need a really good reading of the pH, you can always send it out, and then adjusting your. One thing is, if you have a very low pH, like 4.5, and you read the pounds, that's very low. It's going to take a lot of lime to really bring it up, and that you don't want to do that at all one time. You have to, when you have low or really high pH, and you want to, make an adjustment on it, you want to do it slowly, and a big jump like that, because you're going from 4.5 and you want to go to 6. That's a big jump. The 6.2. Somewhere around there. But you want to divide it into 2 portions, put your distribute it, and then wait maybe about 2 to 3 months, and then put it out again. It will take time to raise your pH. It will take time because as it breaks down in the soil, it will take time to lower your pH if you have high pH, because you're putting sulfur in there, and the sulfur is what the bacteria work on the sulfur to break it down and to release the things that need to be released. Now, you can, if you're using sulfur, which is we did it, and this in fact, I trying to give it. We did the landscape for, and we give him some instructions on how to correct his zoysia grass. It was really super spotty, just a really big chunks missing. It's just really thin, and he had take all root rot, and then he had super high pH. If you have really high, which what I would consider 7.9 is very high, and if you have high pH like that, the probability you having take all root rot is going to be very high, very high. They go pretty much hand in hand, But what we did to adjust his pH quickly is we added a bacteria, which is a bacteria you can buy it online. It cost about, I think about $40 to $50. You get a bag of it. It's plenty for a couple applications. You don't need much. And we put down the sulfur, and then we sprayed the grass with the bacteria. That bacteria specializes in breaking down sulfur. So instead of having a 6-month wait, you got maybe a month wait to get the pH down. It breaks down that sulfur quickly. And we came back, looked at it. Of course, we put manganese on it. It was low in manganese. That's always going to be a problem when you have take all root rot. Manganese is. You can assume that when you have take all root rot, you can make some assumptions, and I think a pretty good assumption. Not always, but you could say that your soil's low in manganese. Okay, and Florida soils are definitely low in manganese, and manganese sulfate is a solution. And I looked at some soil tests this week, and there was like almost zero manganese. There's a little black line on the very bottom. It was just, and and the lady had had her grass there was reinstalled and reinstalled and reinstalled, and she called me and asked me, the grass just got put in and it looks like it's dying. And we went out and sure enough, it had the new grass had already had the beginnings of take all root rot on it, and the pH was way out. But anyway, it's easy to solve, and you need a pH tester. I would suggest if you're a lawn guy and you want your lawn to look and you're do-it-yourselfer, buy a pH tester. That's the best thing to do. And then, how to tell deficiencies, what's wrong with the plant, what's wrong with the plant. And is very good. They have great chart. And as you look at the leaves and try to discover what is the problem, understanding the minerals or lack of minerals will cause certain symptoms in whether you're shrubs or your grass. And manganese deficiency is shown by the yellowing. There'll be yellowing of the leaves from the new growth to the old growth. Also, the veins or the veins or of the structure of the plant will be visible. It will be green. Okay, they will be green. That's a sign of manganese deficiency. The iron deficiency, which is sometimes, a problem, not normally, but can be a problem, is that the new growth is going to be iron deficiency. The new growth is going to be kind of on the yellow side, And the reason nitrogen too low nitrogen can cause yellowing of leaves, but usually it's the old leaves. The old leaves will be the iron deficiencies, the new leaves, the nitrogen deficiencies, the old leaves. The reason that happens is that even though it can be present in the plant, and the iron is very immobile. The same thing with manganese; it doesn't move around. If you, if you have an iron deficiency, the best way to approach it is to spray the leaves. You spray the leaves and you get taken care of. If you have manganese deficiency, spray the leaves. The foliar feeding is the best way to be curative on these deficiencies. Manganese deficiencies, we see it in sagos. You can see it in your plants. You'll have yellowing. A lot of times people mistake manganese deficiency with fungus, because there could be some brown spots on the leaves, brown spots, and you think, oh, that's fungus. Well, it really is manganese deficiency. And that's you'll sometimes citrus. Citrus has a tendency to get that. That will be some of the problems on there. Potassium deficiency is going to be somewhat of red burnished leaves on that. So learning to get a clue, what is the problem with your plant. To have some great charts out there, and follow the guidelines. It is somewhat confusing, is because some of the deficiencies are overlap. Some of the symptoms overlap, just like if you have a cold or you have the flu or something like that. There's some overlap of those things, but you could try adding a general trace elements. But this is the Home and Garden Show with Larry's Garden, Landscape, and Design, and we'll be right back with more great garden talk. Welcome back to the Home and Garden Show. I'm Larry O'Neill with Larry's Garden, Landscape, and Design, and we are talking about outdoor living, whether it be your pond, your pergola, your pH. It's very important to understand that, many of the problems you have in your lawn are caused by a simple pH, making sure the pH is right. I've, been doing this for decades. And I remember I went to one fellow's house and his grass was completely yellow everywhere. I mean, this is a big place. And he said he had like 3 or 4 different landscaping, pest control companies in there, and they could not figure out why it was yellow. And they put this nitrogen and other thing. And I looked at it and I said, well, let's check the pH. And the pH was off the Richter scale, way different than his neighbors. It's amazing, because wherever that dirt came from, when that filter came in there, and it was not just a matter of changing the pH and put a little bit of fertilizer down, and it instantly changed. It could be that dramatic, of a change, when you're having a struggle. Once you get that spot on the grass, that the grass loves the soil, it will really take off. And one other thing When you're looking for nitrogen deficiency in the plant, also you'll notice, I forgot to mention that the plant oftentimes the leaves will be just all yellow. You won't see the veins on them. Sometimes the veins remain dark green, like in manganese deficiency, but when you have nitrogen, they'll just be solid yellow, and very easy to solve it. So always look to get a good backpack sprayer and just to put your fertilizers in that. And these battery backpack sprayers are absolutely great, man. I really like. I was reluctant to get one, and we've started buying some. We got 2 different brands, and we've had actually pretty good success on them. Gone online to get a couple of them, and they actually hold a pretty good charge. It's worth the extra money if you can get one that holds the longer the charge, the better off you are. And, man, it takes some of the pump and pump and pump, and we just hit that button and spray, and they come with a bunch of different nozzles, a lot of them come with a bunch of different nozzles, and, it's a great thing. If you're thinking about getting one, and you're unsure about it because of the reliability, they've been completely reliable for us. And there's, of course, different brands, but we've had great success with them. On the lawnmowers, unfortunately, they got a couple bad reviews on these lawnmower brands that just really have not been producing good lawnmowers, and they start out as good companies, when I was a young guy, these companies were well known. Troy Built got some bad reviews on Consumer Report, and so they suggest to stay away from the Club Cadet, excluding the model XT1 Enduro 54. It got some pretty good views. Yard Machine, I have experience with those, and you do not want to buy a Yard Machine. They do not have good reviews, but they've gone through. They sell out. The original owners, like of Club Cadet, was International Harvester. Of course, they were well-known company, made quality equipment. But since then they've sold out, bankruptcy, all these things happens, and that's what really happens. Troy Built used to be a great piece of equipment, but sold out, bankruptcy. 2 or 3 different companies have bought the brand, and it's gone down the tube. But some of the ones that's still getting good reviews, of course, is John Deere. John Deere's getting a very good review, and you can't go wrong with John Deere, and it's a good product. But for riding mower especially, and Toro is another one that's always high quality. They make golf course, stuff, and so they make a really high-end golf course stuff. And you won't go wrong with those 2 brands. This is the Home and Garden Show with Larry's Garden Landscape and Design, and we'll be right back with you. More great garden talk. Welcome to the Home and Garden Show. I'm Larry O'Neill with Larry's Garden Landscape and Design, and we are talking about outdoor living, whether it be your pond, your pergola, your vegetable garden, your soil pH, and whatever kind of lawnmower you want to do. Riding lawnmowers are a big investment, and the ones that are topping the list are going to be Toro and John Deere. But if you want to call us and you have a question about your lawnmower or your irrigation system, you want to give us a call at 855-765-1045, 855-765-1045. We invite you to call us if you have any great ideas you want to share with us. 855-765-1045. And, this is the dog days of summer. This is what they call the dog days of summer. The perennial garden is doing just good, but it's not going to be in top flowering condition until for about another 30 days. It had a big flower display in spring, and then, it kind of, it's kind of the season in between summer and fall bloomers or the late bloomers. And, but we have plenty of color. There's plenty of color. The coreopsis kind of fill in that spot, this cup plant, the cyphalium, the guara, the helianthus fill in that these blank spots. What else is blooming? We have dwarf crepe myrtles are blooming. Of course, crepe myrtles love this heat. The miscanthus grass are really very ornamental, and they're getting up inside. And we discovered some great bloomers, the ironweed, Arkansasiana. is reblooming. We deadheaded it when it bloomed for golly, probably almost 90 days. It was in flower, and but we cut it back, and it's reblooming to our surprise. All the ironweed, which we have several different types of ironweed. It's just its common name, Verona. Verona is the genus name, but it's really a tough plant. Great butterfly attractor. Beautiful purple flowers, all depend on the variety, but most of the summer, if you deadhead, fertilize, they'll pop back. And we've been trying, to see which ones will rebloom by deadheading. That means removing any of the flower buds that have already spent and see if it will rebloom. So we're getting amazing amount of reblooming. But in the vegetable garden, how are Catherine, how's the watermelon doing out there?
Oh, there are approximately 10 inch.
10 inches. All right, great.
Yes, tall, growing so fast.
Oh, yes.
Amazing and very, very beautiful.
Yeah, see, that watermelon loves this heat. So, we have at least 5 different varieties of watermelon. We're trying this. You need a little bit of room for watermelon. I'm interested the Botswana ice cream. I'm interested in be tasting those. But what kind of soil did you plant those in?
Berries, I planted them in compost with topsoil.
So, watermelon really like a really rich soil, even though they grow in sandy soil, but here in Florida, because, it's one of the top crops in Florida. But if you can put them in a little bit of compost, a little bit of topsoil, you'll reduce the amount of input you have to put during the year, and also the soil's more moisture retentive, especially because if you're planting them in a raised bed, which we have a raised bed, which is around 2.5, 3 feet tall, so it's, the water is going to quickly drain out of that. So we had a little bit of compost, topsoil in there that will really get them going, and also reduce watering requirement, because they gotta have good water. When you're planting watermelon, one of the things that not to do also is to start your seed in a small, and transplant. They don't like to be transplanted. Now, if you had a little like a biodegradable seed start kit, and you just plant the little plant with the paper or whatever biodegradable material directly in the soil without pulling it out of the container, that would work. Okay, that's definitely going to work. You can make it, you can even make your own with a little newspaper and newsprint, and then any paper would work. But, they do not want to be transplanted. And if you wanted to have, some of the things you could do late summer, is planting your pumpkins. If you wanted to have your own carving pumpkin, that would be a pumpkin that you could use for Halloween, and that they need planted in late summer. I always forget to tell people this is the time to plant a carving pumpkin, and you can grow your own, and it's fun. The kid, if you have children, they'll enjoy that. I mean, that's a great science project. You could teach them about photosynthesis and all kind of insects and all different kinds of things. A great teaching thing for science. But that's what you want to plan now. And then also, it's actually a time to begin your fall tomato crop. So with that's another great thing to start right about now. We're going to go to Danny, and Arlington has a question: how to get rid of tree stumps. Hello, Dan. Hello, Dan. Yeah, I can. Sure. Well, you can use some chemicals. There's some biological stuff you could use to, you could drill it in there. You drill put it into the stump. Just put your holes in it. There's a couple different brands, and it will accelerate the decay of it. But you have to keep the stump. The more moist you keep the stump, the quicker it works. That's what kind of stump was it? What kind of tree was it? It's a, pardon me? Oak tree. Oh, yeah. Yeah. If that's the biological way to do it, you could, I don't know where you live, you can always burn the stump too, if you live in an area where they'll allow that. And, oh no, they're not gonna allow that, but you can use a biological method to, and grinding them is one way to, you can chop around it. How big is the stump? 2 feet across. You can always try to, if you're healthy and you feel like you don't want to do that type of work, you can get a reciprocal saw and just cut around the edges and remove all the buttress roots. It's not that big, and you could dig around it, but it's some work. It's definitely some work. But you can use a biological thing. You can buy it online and drill holes in it, and you pour it's a bacteria and goes in there, and it will slowly decay the stuff. It will accelerate it. But the key thing is to get it to really work effectively is you got to keep it moist. Yeah, that's it right there. It's just too hot to be standing out there watering a stump right now. You know, great question. Great question, Danny. We appreciate you calling it. Thanks for listening. All right. Have a great day. Yeah. Tree stumps, getting rid of them, it's always an issue, grinding them up, digging them up, we try to dig them up. And if we can't dig them up, we grind them up and remove the debris. It's all right to have tree stump debris on the surface, but it's really not good. The ideal thing is to have it buried in the soil, because that area now is going to be very hard for things to grow in, because nitrogen becomes all locked out. It's not available because the bacteria are actively using all the nutrients in the soil. As they decay, as the soil decays, or the process of decay in the wood chip, and so the nitrogen, all the nutrients are going to be absorbed by the bacteria, and so plants growing in that area is going to be difficult for them. Now, after it goes to that 3 or 4 or 5 months of that cycle, then it will uh, start to release those. The soil will actually be enriched, but for the first, probably 6 months, maybe even longer, because in the soil, it's gonna have a lower amount of oxygen, and bacteria need oxygen for decay, for things to decay. But anyway, back to the tomatoes. This is the tomato growing season. The next season. Now, our state, we have actually 2 seasons. We have the spring, and then we have the fall, because, the temperature is so a little warm in the middle of July, the dog days of summer. July is the hottest month of the year. You can start to see seedlings now, if at the end of the month, and, reach for the really heat-resistant ones. You could have Everglades tomato, Florida tomato. There's a Heat Master. All these tomatoes are very, very tolerant. And also, you can put in some any peppers. The peppers love the heat. They're not going to be affected by it. They love this. The hotter, the better. They grow, and they can really produce a bumper crop when it's hot. Oftentimes people are thinking about a landscaping, and they wanted to, does it improve your property? Does it make it more sellable? What percentage of the cost am I going to get back? And it's really landscaping is one of the most valuable things to do on your home, because it really returns some of the greatest value. In fact, a grass, according to the National Association of Realtors, grass returns about 200 and something about 200, and I think it was 217% of the cost. So if you have and the grass maintenance, good looking grass, if you're trying to sell your house, or if you're wondering whether it's worth it, and you get 217% return on great lawn. And mulch, if you're going to, again, trying to sell your home, get it ready for sale, and trying to evaluate whether I get that back, mulching returns about 100% of its, having a good edge. All these things accentuate the landscape. A great garden design. How much does that cost? How much will we get returned on the value? You get 150% back of that, according to national real estate people who keep track of all those things. Welcome to the Home and Garden Show. I'm Larry O'Neill with Larry's Garden Landscape and Design, and we are talking outdoor living, whether it be your pond, your pergola, or your up-and-coming landscape project, trying to determine, what is going to give you the greatest return for your money. If you have any questions on that, you want to give us a call at 855-765-1045, 855-765-1045. Or if you have any questions about growing your grass, your irrigation, outdoor lighting, you want to give us a call. And, one of the great things of landscape design does, you get in great landscaping to your home, you get added value. And then you get the value that's it makes it the first house to sell. And we've done many times, we've done makeover for homes that were not able to sell, and they sold immediately. And even when the market was depressed in Arlington and certain areas, uh, where we're trying to sell them in a depressed real estate market, we put in a new driveway, fix the fence, made the grass look great, trimmed up the shrub, make the borders that, put a little bit of color in there, boom, it sold. I mean, it had been on the market for, a long time. I think it was about a year. And then another house, the homeowner told me that the people had seen the house before. They said they wouldn't even consider it. And then they drove by it after we did a makeover on it. And, they said, ask the realtor, why didn't you show me this before? Yeah, she did. And the house sold immediately, after we did a little bit of make. But you're, trying to discern what is going to give you the most value if you're keeping your home. That's another thing, which was it worth the money. Well, landscape design, really produced a good number, 150%. You get back trees, planting trees. That's about 100% return on your money. Trees are, especially those big old live oaks, are very valuable in any type of landscape. And as they mature, and they produce shade and well placed in the right type, and they're something that needs high maintenance. A good quality tree is going to get 100% return on your uh, investment. And then a stone patio, and plus save you on the air conditioning if you're planting on the south side, on the west side. You can, uh, the best. The best insulation, the best, of anything that you do, windows, keeping the sun off the house. That's the best way to be efficient on the energy. Keep the air conditioning bill low during the summer. Pavers, patio, retaining walls, they're going to give you about 50 to 75% back return on your money. And, it's always a first impression. People are, looking for a new home. So a little bit of color, although that gives you a good return on your money, over 100% of that. And, you know, also some of the things, outdoor lighting, that gives you a good return. Not quite 100%, but it gives close to it, about 90, 95%. And these are according to National Association of Realtor, dollars spent value. But the top of a thing, they confirmed to me what I know over 30 years, that if your grass ain't right, nothing's right. The grass is going to be giving you a 217% return on your investment. When you have great grass, that's just, it looks good when you drive up, even if you have a very simple landscape. If it's green, it's looking good, it's going to really help you sell the house. And then of course, you need great maintenance, and that gives you a huge percentage return on your money. Good maintenance on your grass. There's not with grass, it's so expensive nowadays. People think, the grass is dying. They're really not paying attention to the grass. So expensive nowadays. It's worth the money to have great maintenance. A new lawn, I'm thinking a new lawn just on an average house is going to be $10,000. It could, if you have a gigantic place, it could be as much as $60,000 for a gigantic lawn. That it's one of the most important. And then to support your lawn, irrigation always gives a good return. And you need to make sure that you have a good irrigation system in there. And evaluating an irrigation system during the season, that is very important, especially when you really know the irrigation is good or not, is when we have a drought. And you'll see the weak parts of your irrigation during that portion. You'll see those dry patches. And then good time to call the irrigation guy, come out here, make a few adjustments. Maybe it just needs to be adjusted. Maybe you need another head there, or maybe you need another. You need to have. You don't want to divide up your. You want to have plenty of pressure. You don't want to make so many rotors on a zone, or you're trying to stretch it out as much as you can, that it becomes inadequate. So adding another zone is definitely worth the money to get a good quality lawn. Welcome to the Home and Garden Show. I'm Larry O'Neill with Larry's Garden Landscape and Design, and we are talking about outdoor living, where you be your pond, your pergola, your watermelon, or, getting your grass green. You're having problems with nematodes, that's always an issue. And some of the great things, we could tell you about is, how to cure those issues and how to do it yourself. But if you wanted to give it a shot, you want to give us a call at 855-765-1045. Water is so important for us and important for our plants and our garden right now. And the experts on water for us is affordable water. And, if you have well water and it's just doing what you think it should be doing for, and you're suspicious that hey, maybe you need to have a test. And the experts at Affordable Water have worked with well water for decades and decades. They've been, in business in this type of business for a long time. And there's nothing you can do really. Training is important on any service, but when you have that type of experience, there's nothing you can do to substitute for. And Affordable Water will come out and check your well, put in a system for you to and make getting the most out. Also, in home drinking water, they're the experts at that. You read every day, you're reading an article, the plastic bottles or this water is not all what it says. Get a drinking water system installed in your and being sure what you're getting. If your water softener systems, they're experts on that. And they've looked at all kinds of different water softeners. If someone came in there, installed a water softener, and they can't be found, they came from a part of the state or just blanket itself, the water softeners to you, Affordable Water will be able to fix those issues for you and help get you on the road to a better service. Because anytime I buy anything, I'm buying equipment, I'm looking for where do I get it serviced. I used to just look at the price, but I have to look at where do I get this thing fixed when it breaks. I don't want to be sending it to Egypt to get it fixed. I mean, you want to get local service, and they are the experts at local service. You want to give them a call at 904-262-0197, 904-262-0197. But let's say if you have a lawn that doesn't look that great, okay, and it's full of weeds, and you got a little bit of St. Augustine there, and you're trying to decide what I could do. Can I do? I need to replace it, or how do I improve? And that is a project. That is a project. So, and you got a lot of weeds. Weeds are annoying, but they do not harm the lawn. Okay, weeds are annoying, but they do not harm the lawn. Weeds should be the last priority. You need to figure out first. What I would do is I would check the pH. Check the pH like we always start out at the benchmark thing. I would do a soil test, and they'll check the pH when you're doing the soil. And look at the soil profile. I'm going to restore my lawn that looks it's 40% St. Augustine, and you can do it. It's 40%. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some water, and it's going to take some understanding. So you got the pH, you get the pH up to where it needs to be, or about 6 to 6.2. Then you want to look at your soil profile, and you want to figure out what nutrients it's missing and trace out. And let's say because we always know, all Florida soils are low in manganese. Even though you can apply the trace elements, a balanced trace elements like, say, palm fertilizer, Sunnyland palm fertilizer, has a good mixture of trace elements. If you're looking to adjust that in your lawn, Sunnyland palm fertilizer. So, but if you have just almost no magnesium, I would put the Sunnyland palm fertilizer and put some magnesium sulfate on there. And then, okay, that'd be your first step. Okay, we got soil working good. We got all the nutrients in there, and you want to keep the nutrients in place. And the quickest way to hold them in place, so where your work in that lawn is to put some little bit of humic acid, humic and fulmic acid. And humic and fulmic acid will hold the nutrients in place. So you want to add that first, then your trace element. And then that holds them in place so the plant will be able to absorb. And for the long-term step you need to do restoring the lawn is improving the soil, is add mill organic, alfalfa pellets, fish mold, and chicken feed, anything with organic elements, because that will give you the long term of holding those elements that you need in the soil, holding them in place. Because every time it rains, These things like manganese, boron, potassium are very well water soluble, so they're gone quickly. So you want to build, you got the basic foundation. Don't worry about the weeds. Not yet. Not. And then once you get that done, you'll start fertilizing the lawn. And you want to add a little bit of urea, a little bit of potassium in there. Any low, what I would is I would make the application rate maybe 25%, and I would frequently add the fertilizer instead of fertilizer. That little bit at a time, helps the grass get established. You're not over fertilizing, and a little bit at a time is always better because here's what you can eat for 1 week. I give you in one meal. You know what I mean? Uh, that will help stimulate the grass to continue in its growing. Then you want to adjust the irrigation, making sure you grate. The- there's no dry spots. Look at all the head. Make sure they're running proper, and start on the bun. So you may want to turn the irrigation up in that one zone for an hour. I would figure how many inches of water are dropped on that area. I put a couple cups out. You want to be with this high heat around 3 inches a week if you can. In the shade you don't need as much. But in the high sun, dry. If you have really sandy soil, you want to have abundance of. So you get the grass. And so that's the steps where I do if I want to return my lawn. And how long would it take? It's going to take to fill in. And that's going to take at least 60 to 90 days, 60 to 90. And in that turn, where you see a lot of weed growth, because the weeds like the fertilizer too. Just keep it mowed. Just keep it. When you apply for herbicide, it's a chelator, it's a steril, and all those negative. And if you want to give it an extra boost, this will give it an extra boost. This right here. I've taken many lawns in less 2 weeks. I've given an extra. I would get a biological soil inoculant. Okay, I'd get, and, and there it's about maybe. I have either mycorrhizans and bacteria in that one inoculant, and I would get an abundance of molasses, abundance of fish and mold, and I would mix that up, and I would spray that over the yard. And you will know. In fact, I had a client that had the same problem. Their lawn was, not doing that well, and they called me and asked me if I could fix it for them. And that they'd even digging in the lawn, digging in the flower bed, and they turned over a piece of St. Augustine, and the roots were down probably about 18 inches where they dug up and the roots showed me a picture of it. The roots all white, just vigorous, thick roots. And if you do that, the biological inoculant and molasses, some fish emulsion on there, and really put it on a baby once every 2 weeks for about 3 weeks, and you'll really get a kickstart. And for that to work effective, the soil cannot really dry. The biology needs wet, moist soil. That super starts your grass, and you may 90 days you may have, depending on how bad you may have complete recovery. And but sparingly giving out the lawn fertilizer, not in a big amount, but that's going to be more effective. By adding all these components, you're going to have a great lawn. So what is it's going to cost you, versus probably for a new front yard, it's going to be, $5,000 or $6,000 for the grass. All this stuff here probably costs you less than maybe $500. Maybe $500. Just depends on where you shop at. It's probably around that $500 or $600 plus your labor. A good backpack sprayer. Buy yourself one of those operated backpack sprayer. On these organic products, you can use a hose end sprayer. They don't have to be measured exact. They can just be mixed in a hose end sprayer and sprayed. But good backpack sprayers. Once you get the lawn, 80 80%, 70, 90% filled. And you may, say we have a big patch where it's still a lot of weeds. You could take some plugs from your good lawn and plug them in those spots. When you take a plug, you could just read with a shovel, chop it up, move it over to another spot. Just fill that plug up with the planting, and so you are not going to have any weeds there. Now we're going to turn to getting rid of the weed because if the grass is healthy, the weeds are going to come back nonstop if the grass is not healthy because there's a weed bank in every cubic foot of dirt, and there's approximately, according to people who count weed seeds in a cubic, there's about 500 dormant weed seeds in every cubic foot of lawn grass, lawns. And so that's a so it's until you have the grass filled, the weeds are going to, you're going to spray for weeds. And the weeds are going to be back next week, spray for weeds. And all that is doing, it's sterilizing the soil, killing all the mycorrhizas, killing all the bacteria, and you're just getting sterile soil. But you want the bacteria and the mycorrhizas to start building the soil. They start building the soil, breaking down the soil and providing the nutrients for the grass. But once you get it, like I say, 80%, 90%, then you can carefully spot those areas where the grass is filled. And do not use in some cases, a general broadcast is okay. But you got to something after you use a general broadcast of herbicide because there's just so many weeds. You can add humic acid again, and what humic acid does, it mitigates the herbicide by binding with the herbicide and not allowing it to have a negative effect on the soil. So that's a way to restore your grass. You say 40%, 50% St. Augustine, you can return it back to its original. Show, I'm Larry O'Neill with Larry's Garden Landscape and Design, and we are talking about how to restore your lawn that it says 40% St. Augustine, going down quick. If you want to give us a call, you have any questions, 855-765-1045, 855-765-1045. It's always an issue, but the first thing you need to do, before you begin on a lawn restoration, that means your lawn's been hit with something, made that die back, because lawns should last you a lifetime. They don't have an expiration. 90% of the time, not maybe 80% of it, lawns die out for one reason, and it's 90. I found out over decades it's take all root rot that really wipes them out. It's a slow decline that does that. Now you may have a catastrophic event, chinch bugs can come in there and kill your lawn a certain section, and that's all an issue. You may have sod webworm, and sod web doesn't kill your lawn; it just defoliates it. They just leaves the dump. There's nothing but a little bit of fertilizer will take care of it. But you got to figure out what was the original reason why the lawn is disappearing or is disappearing. And once you figure that out, you're on the way to fixing the problem. And if you got St. Augustine left, 40%, I think it's worth the try to restore it. And if you got the will and the understanding, you can do it. And you can always give, like I said, if you got the will and understanding at 104.5, we can get you understanding to get that thing looking good. There's not a long scene that we never we could say, oh, this is not something we can fix, or we can't turn it around in less than 2 weeks. There would be, I've never seen a lawn that we could not turn around in 2 weeks. You could see incredible difference in the. A lot of times lawns, will not grow in certain areas or have difficulty growing in certain areas. Also, is if compacted soil. We worked at one really interesting place that had the soil was so compact we could barely push in our soil to get soil test. We have there's a piece of equipment that made out of stainless to push into the dirt to get the core sample of the dirt. It bent it. It was compact. That's a big problem That's a big problem, but it can be over, as really it should, at that point, it should be tilled. If if looking at your soil and you happen to think, well, this feels kind of, and then you take penetrometer or something, just try to push it in the soil and it won't go in, and that means you're going to have an issue. That should be definitely. But if that's part of the problem in getting your grass to grow, you push in a penetrometer. You should have people who do aeration should have a penetrometer. How do they? Well, I guess if you try to push a screwdriver in there, it needs to be aerated. It won't go. You should have aeration, okay, before you begin the project. A general way you could check is just take a screwdriver and try to push it in the soil. If it goes in, your does not need to be aerated. But if you got to get a mallet to pound it in, that's an issue. That's an issue. And before you begin your project, you should get it aerated. And the best aeration is core aeration, where it's I see a lot of things where they're selling online these little shoes with nails in, and you walk over your lawn. That's you want to get an aerator. Oftentimes, when you get that soil it's that compact, it's very difficult to aerate the soil because you need a large, heavy machine to do that, because even the core aerator, when we try to aerate it, the core aerator wouldn't make good penetration in the soil. It was that compact. Biology will take care of it. If you, over a long period of time, we're talking about a couple of years it will take to help break it down and get it loose. And biology is your best friend mill organite, inoculant, molasses. The bio in the soil, biology corrects everything eventually. It's just nature knows what to do, and it's hard to overcome. Well, this has been the Home and Garden Show with Larry's Garden Landscape and Design, and we've enjoyed working with you and talking to you this weekend. We'll see you next weekend.